Thanks, Mick. Great to be here with you all. When I was in London in my mid-20s, I found myself in the back of an oak-panelled boardroom listening to James Bond ask for my money. Yes, James Bond was asking for my money in the oak-panelled boardroom of the oldest private bank in the world. As hands went up around the room, pledging multiples of thousands of pounds to the organisation that Daniel Craig was associated with, I realised at that point in time that I had two problems. First was that I only had a few £100 in my bank account. And the second was that I had absolutely no idea where my money was going to go, what difference it would make, what impact it would have. A few days later, I arrived back into a and I got together with a few like-minded friends, wanted to do something to give to the community. And we saw that there were two problems we wanted to solve. The first that we genuinely saw in our generation, young professionals, young people want to do good. They want to live with purpose and meaning. They want to give back in ways meaningful. At the time, that in a way that them and that makes a difference. And the second problem we wanted to solve, and I'm more sure of this now 10 years on than I ever was on that day, is that early stage social organizations in this country help them grow. Are for-profit businesses in this country with capital at the start of companies. So why do businesses that are designing the solution to these most pressing problems with capital at the start of theirs? We shouldn't. So we decided to start a movement. We'd get 10 friends together to form a committee. We'd all invite 10 friends and $100. 10 friends, 10 people, $100. We'd invite everyone to be like a mixture between like a networking event and a pitching contest for startup organizations, a little bit like we're not pitching for your money. We'd invite everyone, we'd give them their $100 back, two $50 charity vouchers. We'd ask that committee of 10 people and find 3 early stage social purpose organizations that were coming up with innovative to pitch. There'd be 5 minutes of the questions from a shark, like a Shark Tank style event, in the audience. When everyone arrived, dollars back in the way of 2 $50 charity vouchers, and at the end of the event, where they would allocate their capital. We did 2 other things that were really important to ensure the longevity. We asked people who could help those organizations in non-financial ways, and we asked for 10 people from the audience to put their hands up to be part of the organizing committee for the next event. Organizing committee of the next event to make sure we were never pulling on the same pool of people and the model was always growing and scaling. So that's how we ensured the sustainable element of what we were doing. And that night, I remember people saying to me, Laurie, you're completely mad. No one's going to put their hands up. You're going to be horribly embarrassed. But 16 people on the first night at 10 by 10 we ever did put their hands up, and they became part of the organizing committee for the next event. And now 10 years on, we've had over 170 events. We've grown 10 by 10 right across Australia and then nationally, internationally to New York, LA, London, Hong Kong, Vancouver, Tel Aviv, all around the world. We've supported over 400 early stage social purpose organizations, had 15,000 people come and give at our events, and distributed over $8 million to charity. Thank you. It's nice to get a clap, Mick, because that shit's hard. So that was the journey that we went on in building a sustainable movement, and 10 by 10 still exists here today in Sydney and around Australia. Really trying to bring young professionals together, supporting early stage social purpose organizations. But it's not just about the model we've built, but about the people we're helping. And I want to tell you the story of an organization that we supported very early in their evolution, because I think it speaks to the power of funding early stage organizations and the impact and the outcomes it can achieve. At our second event in Sydney, there was an organization founded by a brother and sister combination called Laura and Jordan O'Reilly, who founded an organization called Fighting Chance. Laura and Jordan had a younger brother, Shane, who had cerebral palsy. And Laura and Jordan struggled their whole life with seeing their brother, who was so able in their mind, so capable, never have access to any type of meaningful work or employment opportunities. So they saw this problem and they thought they'd do something about it. They set up an organisation that placed people that lived with disability into employment opportunities in social enterprises. They took payments from the NDIS to help subsidise people to come and work with those kids and work within social enterprises. They found this organisation called Fighting Chance. They were 1.5 years in when we first found them. They had 23 kids operating in a centre out in French's Forest. And they pitched that night. We had Laura come back a couple years later. And in the room in the 10 by 10 audience that night, there was a man who just sold his business to a large private equity fund for a lot of money. And he was looking at ways that he could support an organisation working in the disability space. We connected him with Laura. A few meetings happened out there afterwards. And then about 6 months later, Fighting Chance received a $1.8 million grant from this donor that allowed them to leverage their wealth. And so where's that organisation today? Fighting Chance then went on to develop a social enterprise called Hire Up. Some of you may have heard of it, just got a valuation of $150 million. They set up another organisation called Jigsaw, which is also helping people with less severe disability get employment opportunities. And now, from 23 kids in one centre in French's Forest, they're working with 25,000 people with disability across the country. That's the power of backing people when organisations win early. And 10 by 10, for me, was a side hustle. It wasn't my day job. I did it on the side. I had a career, like Kat earlier, in finance, working as a fund manager in one of the big superannuation funds. But I saw the great challenge of these organisations that we'd supported at 10 by 10, organisations like Fighting Chance or others another you may have heard of, Orange Sky Laundry, that wash and dry clothes of people experiencing homelessness. We funded their first ever van outside of Brisbane. That was at a 10 by 10 event. And I saw the great challenge of these organisations, that these founders ran around raising $5,000 here, $10,000 there for the first 5 years of that journey. It's a wholly inefficient way to raise and start a business. Could we find a way to mobilise material capital to fund these organisations in the longer term? And I, through my career, I was a portfolio manager in one of the large superannuation funds in the country called Sun Super, now Australian Retirement Trust. Now it's the second largest super fund in the country. And because of my work at 10 by 10, I sat on the firm's investment committee for its socially responsible investment option, where I saw another great challenge of our time. And that is that superannuation funds and institutional investors are all looking for ways to materially leverage their social license to give back to the communities where their members live. All of you are members of a super fund. They're looking at that challenge, but they have two main challenges. The first, they cannot make any investments that aren't deemed to be in their members' best financial interests, meaning that investment effectively has to be equivalent or better than the impact in the non-impact space, right? So the returns in and of themselves need to justify the investment x the impact. And they're also looking for opportunities to invest in the communities in which their members live. I'd seen the success of a similar fund management business that had set up in Australia that was effectively sourcing capacity from fund managers and using that to fund social organisations. It was called Future Generation. And I had a thought, would it be possible to try and do the same thing in the institutional market? Now, I'm going to try and simplify this. This is like partly finance speak here, so I'm going to simplify it very simply, right? Super funds invest with fund managers. Those fund managers charge really high fees, right? Which is why everyone's very focused on fees in Australia. So my vision was, could we go to those fund managers and source capacity in their funds fee-free? So I went to 4 or 5 of my fund managers that I had relationships with at the Australian Retirement Trust, and I said, guys, I would like $50 million of capacity in your flagship fund for free. And they said to me, what you would expect them to say, we're fund managers, we have houses to fund in the Hamptons, rent to pay in Mayfair, jets to fly without sustainable fuel. How can we possibly do that by giving away our stuff for free? And I said, well, you should support this concept for 3 reasons. You've built really big businesses in Australia. What are you doing to show the Australian investment community that you're contributing back to a market that's been really supportive of your business? 2, you've now got teams of people all around the world that are crying out to see how their firms are acting with their social license in a really material way that isn't building some greenwash product, but actually creating outcomes in the communities where your employees live and work This is a really material way of you showing your employees that you as a firm are leveraging your social license in an effective way. And 3, if I get a bunch of super funds to invest in this fund, it effectively gives you a cross-sell into a whole bunch of market participants in Australia and can help you grow your business. So a little bit more arm twisting. A few of them said, okay, this is not a bad idea, we'll come on board. So I then had to go to my employer, second largest super fund in the world, and say, hey, I want to spin out and set this fund up, and I want you to help me do it. And they were going through Australia's largest superannuation fund merger at the time, and they said to me, you're totally crazy. But I said, this is a great opportunity for us as a group, as a firm, to leverage this opportunity. So they then handed me a challenge. They said, we'll give you the first $100 million to get this thing off the ground, but we're not doing it unless you can get another $100 million. And you've got 3 months to raise the money. At which point I thought, I've only ever raised $100 from a few of my mates for a 10 by 10. 100 million seems like a lot more. How am I going to do this? So the first thing I did is I looked at the people in my industry that had similar seats to me in other super funds, and I thought, I'm going to go to the guys that I think have got a heart. And so I touched a few hundred people, and I marketed the fund to a few people because the concept in and of itself makes a lot of sense. To make it simplistically, you source your product from your suppliers for $0. You sell it to your customers for $1. It normally costs your customers $1.50, so they're happy to buy your product for $1. And with that dollar that you generate, you grant 80 cents of it back into the community, and 20 cents covers your costs. You with me? Good. So that was the value proposition. So investors liked it because the returns they were generating were better than the returns they could achieve with those funds directly. And the impact we were making was localized in the community. And this is when the journey of raising the money became quite interesting. And I had one investor from another super fund say, look, I like this. I think I'm good for 30 to 50 mil. And I was like, great, I'm 30 to 50% of the way there, on the way to raising the money for the fund. And this is where the story kind of a little bit comes full circle. And I was on this fundraising journey, and then he rang me one day. He said, Laurence, I've got a problem. I said, what is it? He said, the equity market's sold off. I'm overweight your asset class. I don't think I can do it anymore. And I was like devastated. I was like working with a coach at the time. He's like, Laurence, we really need to manage your highs and lows a little better. I was like, it's over. It's a disaster. The whole thing's going to fall apart. But he said, look, when you come to the fund, we've got another guy who runs a retail arm of the fund. Pitch it to him, and maybe we can find some money from behind the couch. That's actually what he said. So I went back into this super fund. I took my partners with me. I'm partnering with Barrenjoey, the large Australian investment bank, to create this fund. So I took them back in with me, my business partner, Michael. We went in to see this guy running a different part of the fund. And I start pitching the fund again to someone completely different in the same organization. And this guy, I'm pitching to him from $0. Honestly, worst meeting of my entire career. The guy doesn't look at the pitch book. He doesn't ask me one question. His arms are crossed. He's staring out the window. I'm like, this isn't a good sign. I'm getting no money. And then at the end of the pitch, he doesn't ask me one question about the value proposition, the fund, nothing. He asked me one question. He said, so mate, where's the money going? I said, what do you mean? I said, where's the money going? He said, you mean the grants? I said, where are the grants going? And in every single meeting I'd presented this, because we hadn't granted anyone, I used examples of organizations 10 by 10 had funded. And I always gave the example of an organization called Streetside Medics that provides a free medical outreach service to people experiencing homelessness and reduces the costs on the healthcare system as a result. But for whatever reason, in that meeting, I didn't feel called to give that example. I gave another example, and I gave the example of Fighting Chance. And as I'm telling the story of Laura and Jordan and the story of the work that they do, the man's whole demeanor in the meeting changes. And he says to me, this is a stitch-up, right? I said, sorry, what do you mean? He says, this is a stitch-up. He said, you must have known. I said, what did I know? He said, well, you must have known that my wife and I have a daughter that lives with disability. We send her to Fighting Chance, and it's changed our family's life. They put in the 50 million. We closed the fund with 280 million at the end of last year. Today, we're running 670 million in this fund. Thank you. We've created a grant pool to grant $15 to $20 million to social purpose organizations in this country. We've already funded 8. One of them is in the room. Ren and Ben, let's hear it. Where are you? They're over there. You should talk to them. They do incredible work. But all I can say to you guys is this. I have no idea if on this journey I was meant to meet Laura and Jordan, whether there was serendipity in that moment, whether, as my rabbi tells me, there was divine intervention, I have no idea. But all I know is this, that when you imbue your work in this world with genuine purpose, with impact, when your intentions are genuine, these are the outcomes you can create. And this is the change you can be and see in the world. So I'll leave you with that message. And I'd love to just share our slide here, because if you can do one thing, and we often get people approaching me to fund their organizations, but it all starts here with 10 by 10. And we have here a QR code and a slide, and Carolyn will be afterwards. If you want to come on one of our committees, this is where the whole journey starts. And this is what can be achieved. So come and join one of our 10 by 10 committees, be part of the story and the journey in the ecosystem, and thank you for having me.